Today I'm doing some abstract acrylic paintings in my sketchbook using those three colors: naphthol red light, yellow ochre, and ultramarine blue, plus black and white. I wanted to constrain myself to these three colors to practice my color mixing. And I also actually don't love this color, the naphthol red light. And so I wanted to challenge myself to use it, make some different colors, and just loosen up and have fun. Now, I am so close to finishing this sketchbook. And so something about it just grabbed me. I really wanted to get out the acrylic paints this time and paint some interesting abstracts to play with light and dark and saturation of colors and different shapes and just practicing my color mixing and having fun really. So in this video, you're going to watch two sped up versions. So these are done at 4 times the speed. I figured that might be a little bit better than you sitting through a video that's over an hour long of painting. But you'll see me creating different colors, making different shapes, and really just experimenting. I didn't go into this with a plan at all. I just wanted to play, mix the colors, and see what I could come up with this combination. Now you'll see me in this painting using these silicone color shapers a lot. I love using these tools. I've primarily used them for abstract painting. I have two of them. The one that you're seeing right now is the smaller one. I think it's an inch wide. And then I have another that's maybe about 2.5 inches. I love these tools because they just move the paint in a different way to using a brush. It's a smoother effect. I like that I can kind of use them to scrape paint along or away or apply it thickly depending on how heavily I press on those tools. And I'm also using a black China marker. I think this is a Sharpie brand one to dig in through that paint, create some dark lines for myself, and just try to give myself something to respond to. Now, I painted a lot of pages in this sketchbook last year during the 100-day challenge, and I hadn't really done much abstract work or really work with acrylic paints before that. And so maybe that's what was tugging at me for this one, because I know the 100-day challenge, the 100-day project, I'm sorry, just kicked off again last weekend. Now, I can't overstate the value of doing something like the 100-day challenge. Last year, I didn't finish it. I think I maybe got somewhere in the 60s. I definitely didn't do all 100 days. Here's the thing though, I didn't beat myself up for it. It got me painting. I made a lot of new things. I learned so much. I started with doing watercolors in a separate journal. And again, you can see a lot of my paintings from last year's 100-day project in my prior video about finding my creativity in my 40s. But at some point during that 100-day project, I switched to using acrylic paints and really just seeing what I could learn, different ways of applying them, making different shapes, seeing how they layer, scratching them away, paint mixing. But really, the layering was a huge learning for me, especially having spent more time in the last year or two using watercolors. Not that you can't layer in watercolor, it's just a little bit harder to cover things up. And at least with acrylic paints, you can cover light over dark. As you're seeing in this video, I love to scrape through or scratch through acrylic paints to reveal layers underneath. Another thing I've really been thinking about lately, as I've been struggling to get back to my painting table after work or on weekends a little bit, is to take the pressure off myself in terms of subject matter. So I talked about this in a prior video and engaged with quite a few of you in the comments about wanting to get more into doing landscapes or abstracted and loose landscapes in particular. But what I've been finding lately is, although that's something I feel like I really want to do, it just seems hard to sit down and get started. I'm not sure if it's feeling a little bit intimidated by that or not, or maybe I just need to rip the band-aid off and give it a shot. In any case, what I decided to do for this painting session is just fall back on making interesting shapes and layering. And so it might not be the most inspiring painting subject for me, or it's not even really a subject, it's just using shape. But what it is doing for me is getting me painting. And I will say I ended up having quite a bit of fun. It felt like I was starting a bit slow during this session, but I really got into it. And one thing is, I wasn't really aspiring to make a beautiful finished painting. I just kept playing, and some of the things I was doing, I won't say they frustrated me as I did them, but I was just like, oh, that didn't really work how I thought, or why did I mess that up? But it's one thing I really enjoy about working in my sketchbook is there's not really any pressure. It's not like I'm painting it for anyone else. And I can just learn from it. So when I feel like I'm making mistakes or that I've kind of ruined something that I thought looked all right, it's really just an opportunity to see, well, how can I respond to that and what do I want to do next? I also noticed while I was mixing the colors for these pages that what started out as a color that wasn't really interesting me that much, the naphthol red light, that orangey red, when I mixed it with a little bit of yellow ochre and some white and was getting those really lovely peachy tones, I actually really started to like this color. And I think that peachy color is one that I've tried to buy separately in other paint brands in the past. So knowing how to make that now, I feel like naphthol red just moved up on my list of colors that I like to use. Just seeing the different kinds of colors that I can mix from that is really interesting. I'm really happy with this play session and how it turned out, and I think I'll definitely do more of these. Even if I do uh, put on my big girl pants at some time soon, hopefully, and start tackling more landscapey type paintings. These little abstract play sessions are just, I find them so freeing because I can literally just paint whatever I want. There's no pressure. I'm not trying to make it look like anything, which actually is super helpful as I'm learning to paint and learning more about color mixing and freeing up and layering and experimenting with making different marks. That seems a lot easier to do from my perspective if I'm not trying to paint a thing. And maybe that's why I've been sticking with just more abstract, intuitive painting versus the landscapes because I think it's the idea of the landscapes being a thing that's kind of holding me up right now. I'll probably continue on this track for a while as I really try to find more consistency in my art practice. I am still struggling on trying to find the time. And so I think this is another challenge for me that I want to try and tackle is how do I just sit down for, 10, 20, 30 minutes max, maybe, just to explore painting and have some fun and get creative, get to know my paints, get to know my colors and the different ways they combine to make different colors. And and if you're interested in seeing more videos about my art journey and trying to establish a regular art practice in the middle of mid 40s life with work and family and health challenges and things like that, maybe we can help each other build these art practices and all expand our creative selves together. Okay, so why am I doing these exercises? And I guess why do I paint in general? I haven't painted a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I have found myself a little bit on edge, a little bit grumpy, letting some of the stressors from work, especially, get to me. And when I sat down to paint these pages in my sketchbook the other night, I'll tell you, it felt so calming and grounding to me that it really is, it really does feel like a form of meditation for me and a way to manage and maybe control my stress levels and keep them at a healthier place. So that's another reason it feels like it feels so important to me that I figure out how to make this a regular part of my days and weeks, so that I don't get to that point where I'm tightly wound up, stressed, frustrated, and I can just sit, take some time for myself, and be creative. But I definitely notice these days that if I am not spending regular time sitting at the table or wherever doing some drawing or some painting, I feel the negative impacts of that. And so that is what I want to model on this channel. That's what I want to hold myself accountable to. And it's really one of the reasons I set up this channel, was to give myself that accountability, but also to share that journey with you, so that you can see, like, you don't have to be, in my mind, I don't think I'm a great artist. You don't have to be a great artist to make art. You can do it just because it's fun, or and interesting and relaxing to you. Um, Anyone can do that, and it's just a matter of kind of learning to play again and learning to be curious. And that's something that I feel like I'm getting better at through art. I'm at a point on this sketchbook spread where I'm getting a little bit fiddly, but I'm also trying to be conscious of making different kinds of marks. So I'm using just the tip of my color shaper, of that silicone color shaper, to make these thinner lines. And it's not super easy because I'm making curved ones and they're straight edge color shapers. And so I'm having to like step it around those curves, which is kind of interesting in itself. It doesn't make these perfect round lines. And I could have probably done a neater job using a liner brush or something like that, but I did kind of like this. Another thing you might notice is I'd slipped tracing paper underneath both sides of that sketchbook, and that was to help me avoid having the pages stick together behind it and getting paint on the pages just before it, which is something that I really struggled with the rest of my sketchbook. So that was a new thing for me. So, as you might know, if you've watched some of my videos, you know I don't like to waste paint. And if I do have paint left over on my palette, I will try to use it for the start of the next painting. So one thing I wanted to avoid while making this extra page was putting more paint on my palette. So I'm really determined here just to use what's there, and keep mixing what's on the palette. But yeah, use as much paint as I've already mixed that's already on there, and just see what I can do with that. So it was actually kind of a fun challenge, and I'm glad I did this extra page. The one thing I'm noticing as I'm rewatching this is I'm playing a little bit more with bigger shapes compared to the size of the painting. I feel like abstract art, it feels so much harder than, to me, than making representational art. One of the big benefits that I've noticed is that it does allow me to really think about and probably learn more quickly different elements of making art around value, composition, and color. So I am going to stick with it for a while because I feel like I've just learned so much from it. I really enjoy it, and it's just easy not to think about things when I sit down to make art and not have to go and choose a subject matter. I just have to pick a few colors and some paper, and off I go. So I find that just reduces my barrier to entry as well. So maybe try it yourself if you haven't done that already, and let me know how you go.
Big year, but it's harder to breathe. Perform and then it's harder to leave. Shove that feeling for some positive energy. When I stop my car, my check engine lights on. Cold outside, I can't get myself warm. Wanna hide inside, stay in bed and ride out the storm. Cause maybe with me, you'll see there's a cloud trying to block my sun. And if I don't push back, I'll be down before I've begun. But I know for sure there's much more for me in store. I don't wanna sit back alone thinking body cracks. Don't know how it happened, but my page got hacked. Don't you love it when your week starts out like that? Now I know what you're thinking, that I shouldn't complain. I'm just saying all the negativity on my brain. Pessimism can be so hard to tame. Cause baby, with me, you'll see there's a cloud trying to block my sun. And if I don't push back, I'll be down before I begun. But I know for sure there's much more for me in store. I don't wanna sit back alone thinking what's wrong. Just hone my positive energy. Positive energy. I need to cry.
So I made sure so that I don't forget what colors they were, because I'd probably never be able to go back and remember based on what they look like now. Is I made sure to write down the paints, the brand and colors that I used so that I can go back and use that as a reference and learn from it. Now, another thing I like to do, which you're seeing here, and I've just started doing this lately, I do save my palette papers. And so I've got a lot of these palette papers, which are really just tracing paper with these big, like, smooshes of paint on them. What I've started doing in the last couple of weeks is actually just filling in all the gaps on that paper and spreading the paint around that's left on the palette. And why I'm doing that is I'm essentially building up a big pile of papers that I can use for collage. I really hope you enjoy this video. Maybe get some inspiration to go grab your own paints or art materials, and maybe pick some colors that you're less familiar with yourself and see what you can do with them to find something that you like out of them. Take some pressure off yourself by not having to choose a subject if that does feel like pressure to you, and just make marks and shapes and see how things look together. All right. Happy painting, everyone.